Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. Microsoft is moving full speed ahead with version 9 of their Dynamics 365 CRM platform and the solutions built upon it. And veteran CRM professionals consider it an ambitious new set of investments. They revealed many details at an airlift event last week that generated a lot of interest with attendees from around the world. On this episode of the podcast, we welcome Chris Cognetta to discuss the public reveal of the next generation of Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps. Chris is a veteran of the Dynamics space who was at the recent event and documented almost all of Microsoft's announcements there. He's a Microsoft MVP and a Dynamics 365 evangelist. He's also the director for the Center of Excellence and the Client Field Services Engineering team at Tribridge. All right. Hey, Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be on the Dynamics World Podcast.
Yeah, always fun to talk to you. And this is a good time for it with this week's kind of different approach from Microsoft, right? They actually kind of laid everything out and made it open to basically everyone in the universe who wants to pay attention to them, right?
Yeah, 4,000 attendees on the webcast learning about the Dynamics 365 spring release. It was an amazing experience. I think that this is the biggest release since Dynamics itself has been around. From our perspective, you look at all the things that were done there, and we'll drill more into that stuff, et cetera. But when you look at all the rate of change, the pace of change, and what these changes mean, it's just mind-blowing compared to the other releases.
The scale of the change. I've been watching to see, what folks who were at the events and who are CRM experts are talking about. It's just, there's so much there. People can't expect to sort of absorb all of it for themselves. You can't own all of it sort of as one person anymore. And I think people have to come to grips with that to an extent.
Yeah, and back in the CRM 3 and 4 days, an MVP knew everything about that platform.
Yeah.
Right? Now you look at Dynamics 365 and it's like, okay, well, there's multiple additions. There's the services and sales modules. There's the field service, the PSA. There's all the Azure integration with IoT, Cortana Analytics, customer insights. It just goes on and on and on and on, and you just cannot be an expert in all of those areas. It's just not possible anymore.
Yeah, and then there's this whole other side of it, which is, I guess, trying to understand the business case for business edition apps, versus enterprise apps, which is a whole other conversation, and it's wrapped up in, then you get into sort of other considerations, the business considerations of the different practices that you want to run as a Microsoft partner, or if you're a customer trying to be strategic about, do you want to invest the additional license costs in the enterprise edition versus the business edition? It's just so many areas to potentially dive into. We're gonna scratch the surface here today, but being that it's just a day after they wrap this event series up, it's still fresh in everyone's mind. So I was glad to get an opportunity to check in today with you.
Yeah, I think, when you look at the business edition, a lot of the MVPs, Guy Edwards, Joel Lindstrom, Steve Mondu, Gustav Juba, we were all worried about the fact that there was going to be another version of CRM released. And we see that in the products like AX and NAV. They have these CRM Lite solutions that really do our version of CRM no justice, right?
Right.
So when we talked with the product team about it, we were talking about how they would conceptually go about it. I'm glad to say that it's a win now in the fact that, listen, this is on top of the same platform. The business edition is limited in functionality, extensibility, add-ons, and data. And so basically entities, workflows, number of users, number of records, those are going to be the limitations. The platform itself is the same, and the ability to migrate to the enterprise license is a huge plus for businesses who want to just take on Dynamics, see how it works, and then say, okay, I'm ready to invest more licenses. And don't forget, over the years, the monolithic licensing approach really didn't work, right? So Microsoft, with the new licensing model, especially the team member licensing, you can get a user on the system for $8 a month, which is unheard of in the past.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were just talking about with this idea of fluidity, perhaps, or ability to at least move between business and enterprise. Was that something that Microsoft really took on as a topic? Did they answer questions about that?
They did answer that you would be able to go from the business edition to the enterprise edition. Obviously, there's challenges there, how the data is stored, the screen changes, etc. I think one of the big things that people did not take away from the call in the business edition, enterprise edition is right now, the business edition is using the unified client interface, and that is for the business edition, the Outlook web app, and the mobile client. But the enterprise edition has still not been updated and is using the version that we have today with some nice tweaks and enhancements around usability and formatting fonts, colors, things like that they've added in to buy some more time. But eventually, when that all comes together and they're on the same interface, then I can see that it'll be very easy to move between one and the other. So we asked how, when would that happen? It could be during this release cycle. The whole release cycle's changed as well. We're looking at an agile release process in the fact that they're going to release this in a private preview, then a public preview. People will start getting on, then everybody can opt in. So I think that's a great approach.
Yeah, I have to say, I really at first was kind of, for myself, kind of nervous or sort of unsettled, like, I just have to kind of watch all this stuff go by on Twitter, and I'm just kind of get bits and pieces of what was talked about. But by the second day, I was like, all right, I'm ready to sort of hook into Twitter and just sort of absorb what's being shared. And it actually worked pretty well. So, some of the things you're saying now, I wasn't listening to the Microsoft personnel speaking, but, I picked up on a lot of that because, large part thanks to you for all the very deliberate and careful sharing that you were doing of the findings of the day.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jason. For me, it's very important to give back to the community, not only as an MVP, but a tech evangelist. So I don't want people to think that I'm just stuck on the Microsoft dog food. That's not the case. I truly believe that this platform is on the edge of greatness here. We've never seen the level of innovation and integration, especially with all the tools based on Azure, et cetera. We've just never seen it. Conversations we had back in version 3, version 4. We have multi-select pick lists now. You know what I mean? There's nothing that's not there. Those items and the challenges, we have new challenges.
Right.
We have the focus is on business challenges now, right?
Yeah.
I think we're platform hurdles, where we are, and them being on the same platform is a great start to this business edition release.
There's so many areas that we could talk about. Before I forget, to throw out a couple of the ones that really sort of stuck out to me, and I'd be interested to hear what stuck out for you. But the two things, one was what I was getting a look at for the customer insights. I don't know what you call it, customer insights tool platform.
Yeah.
Just the way they're pushing that forward as, I would think if there was one thing that the Dynamics team would want to be shown off at like Inspire in a few weeks, for example, in front of like the worldwide partner network, it would be that. It would be that example of getting practical business results using sort of just the whole range of Microsoft technology and sort of putting it into this, interface that is A, brand new, and B, really built in a very strategic way, I think, using the latest and greatest technology, doing things like sort of omnichannel mapping of a contact across all these true channel mapping, and then predictive intelligence stuff. Really pretty impressive and ambitious. So that was one thing, just this customer insights, the ambition that they're going out on that with. The other one that I saw from day 3, I think, was that platform separation strategy. And the possibilities there are really exciting. And maybe that's a big deal also I think there's a lot of implications. Of all the things, those are the two that jumped out at me.
I wrote a blog article earlier today, and you just picked 2 out of my top 5 that I had. So the first one, the way you talked about customer insights, organizational insights, relationship insights, social engagement, etc. That's all digital transformation, right? It's showing the digital transformation is here today. 86% of all CEOs talk about digital transformation as their number one priority in the next 5 years, right? What you're talking about here is that if you have a CRM or ERP system that's an older system and you have not updated or take a look at some of these technologies, your company's at risk to become insignificant in your channel. And competitors are going to use these tools to understand with predictive analytics. You mentioned the customer retention, the social management, the brand presence, etc. You are able to see a problem, take action on it, and resolve it before your company's reputation and your budget bottom line is harmed. I call this the Walmart class of systems that everybody can have at every price level for Dynamics 365. And when you look at that and a customer that you can make a change because the AI models already predict that, other customers that don't have this technology, they won't even be able to change direction or know there's a problem. And that's why it's so powerful from a digital transformation story on the insights. The platform message is something that I'm glad that you picked up on. I don't think a lot of people picked up on the platform message. And really, the platform has changed in such that Dynamics CRM used to have the sales, service, marketing modules, common and core, all built together. That meant that when we did a release, you had to have all the copies all of the code checked in, and you need to do a complete system test across all functionality, even if you're just applying a bug fix or a change to one of those modules. Well, now they've actually taken those modules and turned them into solutions. So now you're going to have the sales solution, a service solution, a marketing solution. They're calling them solutions, but in my head, Jason, the way to think about it is they're apps, right? Mm-hmm. So now the sales app for enterprise or the business edition for sales are going to be apps that are running in this XRM framework, okay, that has the access to Azure, and it's very versatile when you look at what you can do with it. The other thing is that now all the people who are customizing the systems like Tribridge and Steve's company, they're doing ISVs, click dimensions, etc. All of the people who are doing that, Microsoft themselves are going to have to use the same solution model to get those customizations into the system. What it does is now you can have different releases for sales, service, and marketing. You can have different hot fixes for each one of those apps. And you know, this is just like your cell phone today. You got your cell phone, you got your OS. How many app updates and things do you get all the time? It's continuous change, fixing these problems. And then if you take it one step further than that, if you look at the Azure model, Azure is actually looking at through their metrics on who is using functionality in the system, who is not. If you're not using an Azure function or a component and they see that, basically they can deprecate that and save money, stop loading of the code. And I see we're on the same cuspid of this with Dynamics 365.
Yeah, another thing that reminds me of, I think with this conversation today, I'm just going to surrender to just having us kind of be jumping a little bit all over the place. But what you just said made me think of another thing that seemed to, two questions. First, staying on this XRM platform side, it didn't sound like, from my outside view, that they were talking about it like this is going to be an XRM platform and this is a strategic play to bring in developers and to bring in a new generation of app development. It sounded more like this is going to be more architecturally sound, make it easier to manage, have good, healthy sort of app management practices.
It breaks the dependencies between the different apps, right?
Okay.
So I can now update field service, I can update sales, I can update marketing, I can update sales. The sales apps and components, right. I can do hot fixes. I couldn't do that before without a version release. So someone said to me a long time ago that Dynamics 365 is the last release. There's not going to be a 2011, 2013, 2016. It's not there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just Dynamics 365, continual deployment across all of these apps and modules, getting better, adding new feature set, and being able to react on the fly. That's what the platform gives you. We call it the XRM platform because at the end of the day, it's just a matter of the entities and how they're running underneath. And that's what the platform did this release, is they separated that apart. And for us, that's the future.
When I think XRM platform, I think Microsoft needs someone alluded to this. I forget who it was. It might have been Steve Mordew because, he's got a real Salesforce background. But Salesforce does something along these lines in its Force platform, right? They encourage app development on top of what they offer using like a platform as a service for their client. And I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is saying, well, we really need to bring something like that forward. And they might not try to really push it like that yet, but a year from now, if this platform approach has really matured and sort of stabilized, and then the common data service side of things has really matured, where they sort of the entity data store aspect of things has really matured, virtual entities maybe have really matured, that Microsoft really starts to put its foot on the gas in terms of promoting Dynamics 365 as this platform in addition to being a customer engagement solution. I know that there are some people out there, I'm not sure if you're one of them, who have been excited about that possibility of selling an XRM SKU, for years, that possibility has always been out there, and maybe this is a step toward that.
Yeah, I think when you look at the licensing model and how they've made the team member uses, there's a lot of reasons to want to build your own entity model and build your own solutions. And, I actually taught a class on using Dynamics 365 as a development platform, and the guys were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, if you look at the fact that you have a GUI, you got a front end, you got a screen, drop and drag fields, you got entity creation, you got an SDK, and you got the ability to deploy it across all different devices, why wouldn't you want to develop your solution on top of it?
So you were saying that you have run training related to platform development of solutions using the CRM, XRM platform. I was just curious, when have you run training like that? Has it been recently?
Well, so we don't necessarily train on that. What I'm talking about is we have actually academy model. And in that academy model, we actually teach building solutions, et cetera, and talk about XRM and the strategy around that we use for our industry solutions like Offender 360 and Healthcare 360. That's more what I meant around in the training model.
Okay, got it. I guess I would just close out on that by saying I'm very, very interested to see where that goes and, how quickly some of those architectural changes are rolled out. Also, I guess, I don't know if this was discussed at all, but sort of the cloud deployment model for 365 customer engagement apps. Last time I was sort of educated on what the actual sort of cloud architecture of it is with sort of the, the use of, or how they deploy databases, how they deploy, the solution for each tenant, that kind of thing. Has anything else changed in their strategy there that is relevant, or is that pretty much staying the course, you think?
I'm sure that there's changes behind the scenes. Just getting a note of how many times I saw the word Azure in the slides and in the conversation context of what was going on, I would not be surprised if we have not migrated components and pieces into or on top of the Azure platform, right? Mm-hmm. So, but nothing was said or released in relations to that. So I think that is part of their journey and what they're thinking about. But I think that's going to come out in the next few months on some of those platform changes. But the biggest one is, as we said, breaking apart that core app into the individual solutions.
Okay. One area, just to jump once again here, that I think I picked up on you being pretty interested in based on the kind of work and the parts of what Tribridge does that you're responsible for, particularly on the support side, was the organizational insights or organization insights. I'm not sure which
right.
It was, right?
Yep.
But
they actually call it org insights.
Org insights. Okay, great. Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about what you were seeing there and why that was particularly interesting to you?
So this is a tool that we've all been waiting for, right? How many times have you heard a conversation of, how do I tell what the users are doing, what they're using in the system, how long they're on the platform? How do I tell what workflows are running and taking up all my processes? How can I tell what plugins have failed, right? All these telemetrics are now available. And I actually, I tweeted about it last night. You can download it right from the App Store right now, and you can put it in your current CRM org. It's a solution. You install it, and then you'll get these telemetrics of how the users are working in the system, the things that I mentioned there. And then there's enhancements coming to that as well. So that app will be updated with new features, drilling down to the entity level, showing you things like data storage for the entities. What are the top tables? What are the long-running queries, plugins from a support organization like Tribridge? We can use that tool in your online instance to see what's really going on under the covers. Why are these things taking long? Is it an inordinate amount of workflows or plugins or tasks taking on, et cetera, as well as, if you have too much data storage problems, things like that. But I also felt that now I can actually see what that user is working on and doing, and that would allow me to change the licensing for them as well. They might not need the full license if they're only working on a couple entities. I can now see those patterns and adjust to them.
Yeah, like maybe they overshot their full user licenses by 10% or something like that. You could adjust that down and ramp up the team users, for example. You could get a finding like that, perhaps.
Exactly. I mean, then that's got a data feed as well. You could probably put that data feed into the analytics and let it run through and tell you, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if that's something on the roadmap coming in the future.
You see it as a tool that partners can use with their clients. Is that going to be, you think, a common use case?
I think administrators, managers, you used to always ask, what is this user doing? You know that they've updated records, they've been in there, but how long have they been on? What is their longest duration on a record? All this information that we used to have to go and get it from web logs and things like that. Now you're going to see it in the organizational insights, and I think that's a great step. The other piece that got me excited about the auditing capabilities, they mentioned in the auditing set for Office 365, you're actually going to be able to see the CRUD operations when it comes to views. So this particular user saw this many records in this particular query. They revised this many records. That was really nice. That's all coming.
One of the things that made me think, but I didn't actually hear anything about it, so maybe it just really didn't come up, was Lifecycle Services. Did that come up at all in those 3 days?
It did not.
Okay, interesting. And this is the kind of tool from, I followed Lifecycle Services for a few years now, and it's really tied into AX, D365 for operations, formerly AX. And they talked about, the reason I ask is it was discussed as becoming more integral to CRM Online and now, 365 customer engagement. But it sounds like it maybe hasn't really progressed. And this Org Insights, it sounds like it's going to grow start rolling out a lot of the same benefits that LCS has kind of given to the AX side of the world. So just an interesting note.
Yeah, I could see LCS going more towards Azure and having the on-premise deployment of your own CRM and your own Azure instance. I can see that being in there. That way you can get the best practices like you have for AX today. I can still see that portion being there. But, here's another scary part, Jason. You know how many times the word on-premises is mentioned in the whole 3 days?
How many?
Once.
Yeah.
Only one time in the security PM mentioned that those changes will be coming on-premise. Now, we know that on-premise is a yearly release. You get it, usually at the end of the year, et cetera. But, people are asking me, like, field service. They haven't seen field service on-premise in 2 years now. So are these apps ever going to be available on-premise? And is on-premise really the solution that you need? When you look at it, all of these services are taking your data, Power BI, Power Apps, et cetera, and Cortana Analytics. All of these suites are all online. So your data and access to that data and being online in your Azure storage account, et cetera, is really the model of how these things work. And I was a very big advocate of on-premise and on-premise software and having you full control and hosting it yourself, et cetera. But I really think the value prop has swung in the other direction, 100%.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of the most notable, I guess, comments or sort of realizations that I picked up on, and I think a few people made it, was that Microsoft seems to be making the case that the best sort of regulatory compliance and the best security, that they're trying to make the case that those exist in the public cloud now. And whether it's GDPR, which came up a few times, which is obviously important for anyone doing business in Europe starting next year, and maybe other kinds of security too, right? That they think
FedRAMP, they talked about HIPAA, they talked about a lot of those, and those security changes, again, coming to the product. One of the cool ones was the timeout capability, where that when the timeout happens, your screen goes blank, all your data's gone. You can choose to log back in or not. If not, then you're completely logged out of the system. Those are some new features that are required.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many times that has been customized or some third-party, HIPAA compliance IT solutions has been tied in to make that possible until now.
Yep, and then now you just tie in Azure and here you go, right?
Yeah.
I think people don't realize, I talk to so many people about cloud technologies, and they still think it's the rack space, right? It's the server sitting up in the cloud that I can install my stuff on, whether it's infrastructure as a service, whether it's SaaS. They still think about it that way, but it's so much more. It has become a development, global directory, IoT, intelligence, analytical powerhouse, right? That now Dynamics 365 has access, and you can see that the product teams have really taken advantage of some of those components and features, and it's just amazing where we're headed.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the format of this, because this seemed different to me. Was this sort of a new approach in terms of how the Microsoft product team was revealing their plans?
A new approach in regards to the actual rollout? Absolutely, right? The rollout typically was it's going to be out July 29th, here we go, et cetera. This rollout has been more like an agile release. We're showing it to the world, showing you the components and pieces. We're still testing. We're still doing things. We've got private and public previews going on for different features, and we will light them up as they become available. That's the power of being on that cloud platform, of being on that app-independent infrastructure that they can light these things up. And just like your cell phone, I keep going back to that, that is that echo space that your business apps are now turning to.
What about the sort of presentation format where they kind of open this up for this sort of non-NDA reveal? But it was sort of like a semi-private but not private. Was that different? I don't recall seeing an event quite like that before.
So internally, they use the name Airlift, and Blitz and all these different names, but they used to be under NDA. So you would go through an entire Blitz, not allowed to say anything, and then some event would happen and a launch would go. In this case, we actually were, the NDA was actually lifted right at the start of the event,
right?
Which not only got me hyper excited, because then that meant that all the stuff that we've been looking at for a few months, we're able to share with you guys right then and there. So I took advantage to try to get it out to Twitter as fast as possible so people could see what's really coming.
Yeah, and I give Microsoft credit for that. I mean, I could see from our site, I'm guessing you saw it on Twitter and on your blog. I mean, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people, because I did little recaps just based on what everyone tweeted, and there were a lot of reads on that. There were a lot of retweets on just my things, which were, again, trying to just compile what was being picked up from the actual event. So, yeah, I think it was a good move. And it got people pretty motivated after, coming out of a slow couple of months. I mean, they're just, there was a bit of a lull there, and this really, I think, gets people motivated if they're, whether they're partners or whether they're customers trying to figure out what's next. So good move, I thought.
Yeah, a global release, right?
Mm-hmm.
K is global as well. 3,000 participants from APAC, EMA, and Americas, right? Talked about the pre-release and preview experience, not under NDA. You had Washington, California, Virginia, Switzerland, Copenhagen, and India all on the call, all presenting. You had live chat. You had over 500-600 questions in one day. There was answering and recording capabilities being available to play back. I mean, certainly that's a new way for a product launch, and it shows you that you're not just building the products like that, the culture's changing to be that way.
Yeah. Did you get a sense at the event that it was being led by a different by different people than in the past, or anything like that? Did anyone was there like a single sort of leader or sort of person setting the tone for it?
I know the real question you're trying to ask. The real question you're trying to ask is, did it feel any different that Jujhar Singh wasn't around being the lead person or introducing things? And I have to say that all the innovation we have seen is hats off to Jujhar, right? Everything that's been going on to push in the groups what's going on. And listen, I get it. There's a lot of product teams that work behind the scenes night and day to make this stuff happen, and they're the true unheard of heroes. But the pace of innovation that has been in this team since Jujhar has been in charge of the not only CRM platform, but Dynamics 365 has been amazing, right? The challenges and things that we have resolved, like we're talking about our earlier 3 to 4.0 time period. There's so many things you could do. I can't even think of something that I would not be able to attack some way, somehow, and provide an answer with this platform. And him departing and taking another role in Microsoft, we don't know what that's going to be yet. He's supposed to stay around till the spring release is completed. I'm hoping that means that there's going to be a new position where he can work closer with Satya and continue the pace of innovation and other things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no question that everything, at least in my mind, everything that was being previewed this time around, and probably for some time heading, some number of months into the future, will all have his fingerprints on it. Just, it's not as if these things just shut off. And I think it'll set the tone for the future, too. I mean, obviously, I don't know what conversations go on inside offices at Microsoft, but I mean, he certainly set a tone. And, Bob Stutz before him, too, who he was, obviously a key person in that time period, too. But and that will move forward. I think but I do think there will have to be sort of a single person setting the tone the way Jujhar has. Because, I mean, like we started this podcast off talking about, the breadth is so wide now, and there's so many ways to potentially, have to tackle some of the decisions that have to be made about this 365 sort of suite of apps and technology and sort of business cases that have to be handled. I feel like someone's got to come in and take on that role. Have to be someone ambitious, someone who can think big, and it's a big challenge, whoever comes next there.
Yeah, and I don't even know if that's necessarily the same. It could be Param, the people that were on the call and playing those roles. There's lots of different people who, remember, the PMs are still here, right?
Yeah, the point I would make there is just that I think they do need someone responsible for customer engagement overall and taking on all those different challenges from, the technology to the business cases for customers to the packaging and structuring of the offerings. I mean, there's so much to consider there. I would personally think that someone should be sort of the point person reporting up to, I guess it's James Phillips, to sort of lead that beyond Jujar's period having done this.
I can't disagree without knowing what that direction is, and I think the next 2 months we're going to know what that is.
Yeah, and this is the time of year when these things happen at Microsoft. I think there will be other announcements that will impact various parts of the Dynamics space. Maybe not the customer engagement in particular, but I think we will see other changes, shifts, adjustments for various reasons. I've been just hearing little hints here and there, nothing that I would write about yet, or nothing that's confirmed.
I heard a long time ago that Microsoft actually changes up their PMs every 2 years. Keep it new and fresh. So that's possible. And again, I just want to make sure, if I haven't said it enough, congrats to the product team for pulling off what appears to be the largest release in the history that we know of CRM.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today. These are fun conversations, sort of looking at all the possibilities for the future.
Absolutely, Jason. Always looking to help the community out, and you're definitely one of the channels that helps us do that and keep on top of it. So appreciate it. And thanks for having us as a guest today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And we'll do this again soon.
All right, brother.
My thanks to Chris for joining us this week, and thank you for listening to another edition of the MSDW Podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback and ideas for future episodes. You can reach me directly by email at jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.